what's up everybody? This is LA Knight and I am back with the Legend of Zelda book tag. Now, just so you guys know, I have actually tried to do this tag like 3 times and the audio has been sitting on my computer and never got dealt with, and then my answers ended up being out of date because I read more books and so my answers change. And so I'm really sorry, Lorienkittybooks, the creator of this tag. She's actually my best friend in real life, and I totally did not do this tag when she tagged me like 2-3 years ago, and I'm finally getting around to it, and hopefully this one will go up on time because I'm all set to post it after, I do all the editing and stuff. So here's hoping that this one actually gets up. So Legend of Zelda is this video game from Nintendo, and apparently it's one of the things that made them famous. But I've only ever played Ocarina of Time, whatever. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And when it came out for the Nintendo 64, when I was a kid, I sucked at it, and I don't play games that I'm not good at. So, and yeah, okay, practice makes perfect, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't really have time, I still don't have time, to actually practice at a game that I am not instinctively good at to begin with. So I haven't really played Ocarina of Time very much, and I haven't played any of the other games because I just really don't, I'm not that interested, and I don't have a lot of time to play video games anyway. So if I'm going to play a video game, I'm going to play one that I really, 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 really need to play, which so far that's only been like 2 video games in the last like 10 years. But I love the manga. I've read the Legend of Zelda manga. I borrowed it from Lorien, of course. And the story is interesting, and the art style is cool, and I like Link, and I think it's really creative, or it was when it came out. And so that's why one of the reasons I was willing to do this tag. The other reason is because it's Lorien who invented it, and she's my best friend, and she asked me to do it, and I've been meaning to do it, I swear, so I'm going to do it now. Question number 1, Legend of Zelda, your favorite classic. I have to say A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I read A Little Princess. I saw the movie when it came out in 1993. That one is actually, out of all the books, is the one that is least closest to, I'm sorry, I said all the books. Out of all the movies, because this movie's been done like 4 times, out of all of the movies, the 1993 version is the one that is the least closest to the book. So I was actually shocked when I read the book when I was 6 to find out that, like, oh shoot, her dad actually doesn't survive. He's actually dead. Oops, I didn't know that. But I really connected with Sarah. Like, every incarnation of Sarah that has ever been, I've really connected with her because she likes to read like I do. I've always loved to read. She likes to make up stories. She's very well educated. She finds herself one of the smartest people in her sphere of acquaintances, which, especially when you're young, can be a pain in the butt. I grew up, for the most part, in a very illiterate area. Not that people couldn't read at all, but they really couldn't read very well. Like, we had high school seniors who read at like a 2nd grade level, and reading was considered like not a cool thing to do. So characters who read books were really important to me as a kid, and she was the first one I was exposed to. Question number 2, The Adventure of Link, a sequel that was just as good, if not better, than the original. There are actually several potential answers, like runner-up answers to this question, but the one that really got me, that I was like, this one is it, is Heir to the Shadows by Anne Bishop. Now, Daughter of the Blood, which is the first book in the trilogy, Heir to the Shadows is the second book, Daughter of the Blood, which is the first book in the original Black Jewels trilogy, is a good book. I mean, there's things that are wrong with it, but it's a pretty good book. But it's super dark, and there's not enough to alleviate the darkness. Heir to the Shadows is just as dark, but there's a lot more stuff to balance it out. You get introduced to more characters, there's more world building, you get to see a lot of strong young women, and I say young because they're between the ages of like 12 and 17, really coming into their own. They're like, you deal with an entire group of basically princesses who are all really good friends, which I think is kind of cool. There's none of this catty, bitchy, infighting, trying to sabotage each other, which is so common in YA. Now, this book is not a YA book, which might be why this is in there, but I really liked the camaraderie, and I just thought it was just better than the first book. It maintains the dark themes and elements without being, like, super depressing. So that's why I think that it's better than the first one. Question number 3, A Link to the Past, a book you consider revolutionary. Now, this question was not in Lorien's original tag. This was added by JacquieVlogsHere because According to Lorien, she ran out of questions, and so she didn't cover all of the games. So, a book I consider revolutionary. Now, I actually have 3 answers to this for various reasons. The first answer is Harry Potter. Now, a lot of people know I have a conflicted relationship with Harry Potter because I loved it when I was a kid, and I like a lot of it still, and I love certain aspects of it, but other aspects make me want to stab somebody in the face. And I'm like I have a very critical view of Harry Potter, but at the same time I can acknowledge that it actually did a lot for young literature, for young people. Because before Harry Potter really got big, a book that big for the age group that it was aimed for was virtually unheard of. Not that it never happened, but it didn't happen very often. Harry Potter showed people, publishers and editors, that young people are willing to read larger works if they're well done. This actually later went on to inspire Tamara Pierce, who wrote the Tortall series, to write the song, or not the Song of the Lioness, the sequel to that series, Daughter of the Lioness. The Daughter of the Lioness series. Now, until she wrote Daughter of the Lioness, Tamara Pierce had always written small quartets, like the Song of the Lioness Quartet, which is 4 books that are all fairly short, and the Immortals Quartet, which is the sequel, the like chronological sequel to that quartet, also fairly short. Most of her books were really, really short relative to YA novels today, until she wrote Daughter of the Lioness, the duology. It's the first time she's ever not done a quartet, and that was 2 books, Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen. And in the foreword for Trickster's Choice, she says that one of the reasons that she felt comfortable doing this and why her editors were like, yeah, we can totally do a book this big is because of Harry Potter. I don't know any book in YA at the time that it came out that was bigger than Order of the Phoenix. I think Order of the Phoenix is one of the largest YA books that's ever been written. Not the largest because of Throne of Glass, which for some reason is marketed as YA even though it's not, but I'll get to that in a different video. But anyway, so I think Harry Potter really influenced the way, like the length of YA, which then later led to something that Stephenie Meyer did. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Twilight, and I know that Twilight's got a lot of problems. Like Harry Potter, I have a very critical view of Twilight. It's just that there's less work in the Twilight saga than there is in the Harry Potter saga, so there's less to critique because there's just fewer like installments of the series. But I still have critiques for Twilight, and while I do have issues with Twilight, many issues, and some issues with Stephenie Meyer, and some issues with the publishing market that surrounded Twilight, I do have to say that Twilight, piggybacking off of Harry Potter with the length thing, then gave us something that we, for the most part, didn't see until Twilight got really popular, which is very in-depth, very emotional, introspective YA. For the most part, you didn't get that unless it was an issue book, quote unquote. Issue books are books like, actually I don't read them, so I can't think of any. But basically, issue books are books that address like coming out stories or kids dealing with racism or whatever. You didn't really see that in a lot of genre fiction for YA. You didn't see a lot of introspective genre YA. With the emphasis less on the action and more on like the emotions and the character-driven plots, unless it was contemporary, which I personally don't consider a genre because it's basically just slice of life, real life. This is what's going on with teens today. So Twilight was also very revolutionary in the fact that it expanded how deep we could go into characters and plots. And I know that that sounds kind of ridiculous to some people because like the plot of Twilight is literally this girl falls in love with this vampire, and that seems very simple, but if you compare Twilight to say The Secret Vampire, aka Night World by L.J. Smith, which came out maybe like 10 years before that, it's basically the same premise. A girl falls in love with a vampire, but the book is much smaller. It's maybe 50,000 words, maybe. It's really short, and there's not a lot of depth to the characters. And not in a bad way. It's there's not a lot of room to really delve into the characterization. The characters aren't very well fleshed out, and the plot is very simplified. And whereas in Twilight, like you got like a whole lot of stuff going on, also with Edward and Bella and their relationship. So I think Twilight really helped expand what we could do in the YA genre regarding like character development and descriptions and lyrical prose and getting away from action, 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 character being pushed along by the plot versus character decisions pushing along the plot. And then finally, and I think all three of these books are equally important, or I should say all three of these series are equally important in how they revolutionized writing for teens and middle grade kids, is Throne of Glass. And yes, Throne of Glass, like Twilight, like Harry Potter, has a lot of flaws, and I have a very critical view of those books also. But Throne of Glass did something that, because of its popularity, it managed to do this. I'm not saying it's the first book to try to do this, but something about the book really sparked people's interest, and really, just because the author tried to do something doesn't mean that it actually worked, but popularity on top of author intention is what revolutionizes a genre. So what Throne of Glass did was it gave us a female lead who, unlike Bella, was confident in herself, understood her value, was okay with being admired, and was okay with being, like, not fitting into a single niche. Like, I remember, because I wrote a book myself, and I studied a lot of the books that were coming out for YA at the time in 2010, which was 2 years before Throne of Glass came out, and it was almost impossible to find a female lead in a YA novel who was both badass and girly, like stereotypically girly. You had to choose. It was either the girl could like clothes and jewelry and sparkly things, or she could like books and science and nerdy things, or she could like sports or fighting or weapons, but you couldn't you couldn't pick and choose from those three things and make a character. It had to be one or the other. You couldn't have all of them. And Selena is the first very popular YA female protagonist who not only could fight, but she loved to read, and she liked music, and she could play piano, and she liked clothes, and also liked herself. Like, she was confident in herself. You don't see that even now very often, but you see it a lot more since Throne of Glass came out and became popular. So while all three of these series are like heavily problematic in a lot of ways, they really did revolutionize the publishing industry. Question number 4. Oh, and sorry for the really long answer, but I have a lot of feelings about this. Question number 4, Link's Awakening, saddest book you ever read. This is a toss-up between Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor or The Road to Memphis by Mildred D. Taylor, ironically. Daughter of Smoke and Bone ends on a cliffhanger, and you think that the love interests, the main couple, are like never gonna get together because of all the terrible things that have happened. And the things that he is responsible for, including killing the male lead, the male lead killed the female lead's dad figure, and I was like, no! Like, I spent the entire second book being like, oh, maybe he's still alive because they have ways, but no, he was dead. And I loved him, and they didn't even get a goodbye or anything. It was like awful. Like, and the end of Daughter of Smoke and Bone was terrible. Not terribly written. It was so painful though, because like Karu leaves, and Akira, her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, I guess, is like, I'm sorry, and she just looks at him like, and the only reason she doesn't kill him is because of all their shared history. And oh god, and then also The Road to Memphis, because I don't know if you guys have read, what's it called? Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which is actually a really famous book, by Mildred D. Taylor. It won the Coretta Scott King Award back in, like, the 80s or 70s when it came out. But, The Road to Memphis is the third book in the main series about this character, Cassie, and there's this boy that she's known since the first book named Jeremy, and, Cassie's black and Jeremy is white, and this is set in the 20s and 30s. And World War II, actually I think at this point it's like 1940, because I think Pearl Harbor happened, because Jeremy enlists in the army to go fight in World War II at the end of the third book. And the reason this happens is because he gets thrown out of his house for saving one of Cassie's black friends from a lynch mob. Well, he actually doesn't do the saving, but some black kids do, and if it's found out that these black kids spirited this other black kid out of the state to get away from this mob, and these people who wanted to kill him, then they would all get lynched. And so Jeremy is like, no, I did it. I'm the one that took him out of the state. And so his dad disowns him. He's not allowed to speak to his mother. His dad won't let him. His dad beat the shit out of him. It was so terrible. And you don't see all this, but you find out because he goes to say goodbye to Cassie and her brother, who is Jeremy's best friend, really, which is really important, I think, and really cool, because they're both their parents, Cassie and her brother's parents, and then Jeremy's parents have always been like, you guys can't be friends, and yet the kids are still friends, which I think is kind of cool. But so Jeremy goes to see them to let them know that he's going to Europe to fight in the war. And it's so sad because, like, if this was like modern day and not at the time that it was set, Cassie and Jeremy totally would have been a thing. Like, you can feel it in the text. And they're not, because of like racial division, and it's so sad. And so he leaves, like, he's like, take care of yourself, Cassie, and blah 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 blah, and he walks off, and her brother's like, you be careful out there, Jeremy, and she's like, yeah, you be careful, Jeremy. And the last line of the book is, I never saw Jeremy Sims again. And it's so he died. Like, it was so sad. I thought he was gonna come back, and oh, it's awful. I realized, like, I stared at the book for like 20 minutes after I finished the book. I was like, wait, that's the end? Also in this book, one of Cassie's friends dies. He has a brain tumor, which they don't know about. They think he's just sick, so they leave him with some friends while they have to go and get their other friend out of the state. And when they come back, he died. And I'm just like, what? No, what? Oh my god. And like all the growing up and all the sad and all the death and all the depression. Oh. Question number 5, Ocarina of Time, a book where the main character matures. Now, I know in Ocarina of Time, Link actually turns into an adult, but I'm assuming the question is referring to emotional maturity, not physical maturity. So I'm going to say Vortex by S.J. Kincaid, because that's the sequel to Insignia by S.J. Kincaid, where the main character, Tom, has a lot of issues, and he's very proud. And so he refuses to work the system because his dad used to make a living working the system, not like in a I scrounge welfare checks off the government kind of way, but in a I'm a Slytherin and I'm very cunning and ambitious kind of way. And Tom and his dad have kind of a rocky relationship, and it's a whole big thing. Anyway, so Tom refuses to what I call play the game, which is manipulate the system to benefit you because the system is not going to help you. He refuses to do this. And I don't see what the problem is. Of course, I'm a Slytherin. I guess, I don't know. He just won't do it in the first book. He's just like, no, I'm better than this. I refuse to help you. And in the first half of the second book, he's just like, nope, not gonna do it, not gonna do it. But by the end of the second book, he finally learns to play the game, and he does it very well. And it really helps him out. And I'm really glad of that because he was having a really rough time up until that point. Question number 6, Majora's Mask, a book where time is an important element. I read the manga for that, and the manga is freaky, which is why I'm never, ever, ever, ever playing the game. The book I picked is Gone by Michael Grant. It's the first in the Gone novels, and the reason that time is an important element is that at every chapter heading, there's a countdown. And you don't know until the end of the book what they're counting down to, and since I didn't know and I couldn't figure it out, I'm really good at figuring stuff out most of the time in plots, but I couldn't figure this out, and so I was freaking out the whole time, like, what are we doing, what's happening, I don't know, I'm scared, and I just, yeah, so time's an important element, and it freaks me the hell out. Question number 7, Oracle of Ages / Oracle of Seasons, a duology that doesn't get the attention it deserves. I had to go with Gone with the Respirations by Leah Habel. Sounds hilarious, right? It's like Gone with the Wind, except with zombies. Except not really. But it's about this girl named Nora Dearly in neo-Victorian London. So she actually lives in South America, and she's actually Hispanic, which I think is interesting. But, so it's like, she lives in South America, she's Hispanic, but it's like a much more culturally and, like, advanced liberal world that she lives in, except for the fact that girls still have to get married most of the time. But same-sex marriages are acknowledged, which is cool, and women can hold men's jobs, also cool. You actually find out that, going back to the same-sex marriage thing, there's this thing about parasols. When a girl comes of age, she gets a parasol, and it's a gas lantern parasol, so there's a light on the top, and the color of the light, is an indicator of where she is on the courtship spectrum. So if it's one color, that means that she's free to date and she's not engaged. Another color means that she's betrothed. Another color means that she is not interested in dating because she's asexual, which I think is cool. And another color means that she's a lesbian. And I think that's really neat. So, I really like that. And anyway, the point of the book, though, is that she falls in love with a zombie, which sounds totally gross, but that zombie is hot. Like, and it's because he's being maintained by the government, so he's not rotting. He works for the government, and so he's just really pale, and he looks like he has cataracts. But he other than not having a heartbeat and being pale and looking like he has cataracts, you couldn't tell he was dead. He's super hot. I've seen pictures because in some of the non-US versions of the book, there's a picture of him on the cover, and oh boy. Also, I've talked to the author in person, and she's really, really, really nice. Question 8, Wind Waker, a book revolving around the sea in some way. Gotta go with Fortune's Fool by Mercedes Lackey. It's book 3 in the Tales of the 500 Kingdoms. It's really hard to get through the first book. I haven't read the second book, but I read the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth book. It's not really a sixth book, it's a novella. And they get better as they go. But Fortune's Fool is a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but mixed with other mythologies that don't have mermaids in them. And it's really interesting because instead of the Little Mermaid being like, she meets a prince, and she sees the prince and saves him from drowning, and then she's like, Daddy, I love him, don't be mean to me, give me legs. This girl actually can make her own damn legs, thank you. And she, instead of being like, Daddy, you're so mean, she's actually the Sea King's spy master because she's the 7th daughter, and each of the kids has, like, because in the order of their birth, has, like, a special talent, and hers is that she's, like, super lucky, because in fairy tales and myths and stuff, the 7th child is always lucky. And she ends up falling in love with the 7th son of a 7th son, who is extra lucky, and he's got magic too, and she actually doesn't come on land to be with this guy. They meet each other on land while they're both on assignment for their respective monarchs, which I think is cool. And then also The Mermaid's Madness is cool, but it's super sad. Also a Little Mermaid retelling by Jim C. Hines. But there is no happy ending, and the prince is a dickbag. Crown Prince of Douchebags, long may he reign. Question number 9. Four Swords, book or series with the best fandom. I have to say Black Jewels by Anne Bishop, because they are literally the only fandom I've ever been in where nobody sent anybody any death threats. Now, granted, I'm sure there has been other fandoms where that didn't happen, but none of the fandoms that I belong to has that distinction except Black Jewels. And that includes The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Land of Stories, The Hunger Games, Twilight, the Red Queen fandom, which I don't know what that's called, Shadowhunters. I mean, like, literally every fandom I belong to has, at one point or another, gotten into a whole big fight and, like, been calling people names and threatening to kill people, and except the Black Jewels. We're all pretty chill. Question number 10. Minish Cap, a book that reminds you of being little. Well, I had to go with The Thorn Witch by E.B. Taylor. It's super cute. It's about these two living puppets. I didn't know for the longest time that they were puppets. Like, they're rag dolls or something. I didn't realize that when I was a kid. I thought they were just kids with weird hands. But they're actually living dolls who go to school and stuff, and they end up, they think they're going to a costume party, and turns out they got the date wrong, and so on their way home, they see some blackberries, and they're like, ooh, blackberries, and so they're gonna pick them, and as soon as they pick the blackberries, the witch who lives in the brambles is like, bitch, I caught you stealing my food. And it's kind of like Hansel and Gretel, except it's two girls, and they totally kick ass, and they end up teaming up with the witch's daughter, and it's really cool, and the illustrations are neat. I would not recommend this for, like, really, really little kids, because there's paragraphs in it, but I would say maybe, like, 5, 6-year-olds. And it's so cool, but it's out of print, sorry. Should have mentioned that before. Question number 11, Twilight Princess, a book with a dark theme. Now, I actually know a lot about Twilight Princess, even though I don't even know if there is a manga for this, because Lorien loves it so much. So, I understand why dark theme. I have to go with The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. Now, the first, 3 times I tried to do this tag, I hadn't read The Darkest Minds yet, but I finally have read it, and oh my god, it is depressing. The end. Oh my god. I had to stop, multiple times when I had tried to read the book before, because of that shooting scene where the government literally guns down, 500 kids who aren't even doing anything. They're just trying to run away. They're not hurting anybody. I always had to stop at that point. I managed to struggle through that point this time, and I finished it, and I'm just like, do I want to read the second book? Are they gonna get back together? Is she ever gonna be happy? I don't know. But everyone loves the series, and they're making a show out of it, so I'm assuming everything's gonna turn out okay? I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe everything will go to hell in a handbasket and we're all gonna die. I have no clue. Question number 12, Phantom Hourglass, a book where everything is not as it seems. Now, this question was added by JacquieVlogsHere, who is very smart. I love these questions that she added. I have to go with Splintered by A.G. Howard. Now, again, Splintered is one of those books that I like, but it's, kind of problematic for various reasons. But I really like how twisty it is. The plot is very twisty. A lot of the plot I couldn't call. There's a guy in the book named Morpheus, and like while you get a kind of a vibe off of Morpheus, like is he legit or is he not legit, you never actually like he is legit but he's not. Like that's why it's so twisty, is you never know if he's legit or not, because it depends on what he's doing. Sometimes he's legit, sometimes he isn't. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Depends on what you want out of him. And I think that's really interesting. There's a lot in the book that is problematic, as I said, but I still really like the series. Question number 13. Spirit Tracks, a book where characters do a lot of traveling. This was also added by JacquieVlogsHere. I have to say Once Upon a Winter's Night by Dennis L. McKiernan. This book is not for everybody. It's written in a very interesting way. It basically, imagine if time travel was a thing, excuse me, and somebody went back in time to like the time when like bards were telling their epic tales that lasted like days to kings and queens, and you brought a tape recorder and then you tape recorded somebody telling these stories to like, you know, singing their songs and telling their tales to like their monarchs or whatever, and then you came back to the present and wrote everything they said down. That's the style that the book is written in. So some people don't like it, some people do. I really liked it. You kind of lose the style as the series goes on because there's other books in the series, but I really like the way they did it in the first book, and it's a retelling of Once Upon no, what's it called? It's a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is a fairy tale about polar bears and ice castles and trolls. And anyway, this girl she ends up falling in love with this prince who is stuck as a polar bear half the time, and he ends up getting kidnapped by the king of the trolls to marry his evil, ugly daughter. And she ends up having to go to the place that is both east of the sun and west of the moon. For those who don't know, that is the Arctic Circle. Because it's a place where the moon and the sun are in the sky at the same time, like right next to each other, very visible. And the only place you can really get that, where it looks really all creepy and magical and stuff, is at the poles. But there are no polar bears in the Antarctic, from what I understand. Right? Is it? Because it's like bear circle and non-bear circle. And I read a thing about how Arctic means bear or place of bears, and Antarctic means place of no bears or something. So yeah, there's no polar bears up there. And I have other retellings of this story that also have a lot of travel in them, because the girl has to go from wherever she is to the Arctic Circle. But in the other versions, she doesn't have to travel as far. Like in Ice by Sarah Beth Durst, she's in Canada, and then she goes up to the Arctic Circle. In East by Edith Patu, she's in France, I think, or no, she's in Scandinavia, and she goes to the Arctic Circle. But in Once Upon a Winter's Night, she was in France, went to Fairyland, and then went to the Arctic Circle in Fairyland, which is a lot further away from French Fairyland than the Arctic Circle is from Scandinavia or Canada. Question number 14. Skyward Sword, a book that was difficult to get through. I have already mentioned that I had trouble getting through The Darkest Minds, but I'm actually going to give a shout out, in a very negative way, to this book, because I hate this book, and I'm going to take every opportunity to denounce it and talk about what trash it is. Enclave by Anna Guira. And the reason it is absolute trash, other than that it's just badly written, is that the main character, who is 15 years old and is supposed to be mature and is supposed to be a good guy, it ends up traveling with this 12-year-old girl. Nothing wrong there, right? This 12-year-old girl who was gang raped by these dudes before she and the main character meet up. Okay, nothing really wrong there, LA. What's your problem? My problem is that they also have to end up traveling with one of the guys that raped this girl multiple times. He took her prisoner and helped rape her multiple times. And he was going to rape the main character, because he doesn't care. It's the apocalypse. There are zombies everywhere. Why don't we just do what we want to do? And so he has raped this 12-year-old girl multiple times since she was like 9, and he was going to rape the main character. And the main character, instead of being like, no, we're not traveling with you, is like, oh, 12-year-old girl who's got like serious sexual trauma, I don't think you were actually raped, because if you really were raped, like, you wouldn't have been raped. You would have killed yourself before they had a chance to rape you. Since you didn't kill yourself, obviously you wanted whatever it was they did to you, and you just need to suck it up and deal with it and stop showing all this buyer's remorse. And then, so basically she's like, to the girl, she's like, you can either travel with us and your rapist, or you can go and get eaten by zombies. Those are your choices. And I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Aren't you supposed to be the good guy here? But whatever, nobody listens to me, apparently. So yeah, there's a shit ton of victim blaming, and the main character is just an awful person. Oh my god, I hate her. And this is never shown to be bad, because the books are from first-person perspective. She never doubts this decision. And then, the rapist ends up being one of her love interests. He's the second half of her love triangle. And I'm like, really? Really? Like, this is, what? Why? Oh my god, like, in what universe is this a good idea? So yeah, that's why I like to shit talk this book. Question number 15. A link. Oh my god, this video is so long. Question number 15. A Link Between Worlds. Your favorite spin-off book. This was added by Novels and Nonsense. I gotta say, A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. It is about the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and John Watson in the modern day. So you got Jamie Watson and Charlotte Holmes. And I love them. They're so cute together. And Charlotte is like so badass. She is the epitome of a Holmes. I mean, like, everything you think about Sherlock Holmes, except she's a little bit nicer, but everything you think about a Holmes when you think of Sherlock Holmes, like, you know, the drug addiction, the super genius brain, like, attention to detail, knowing all the things that ever were ever, she is it. She's it. And I love it. And, also, we have a really, really strong girl friendship, because for the first time in modern pop fiction, we see Irene Adler, who is played by Rachel McAdams in the Guy Ritchie movies, and she's a villain. And in the Sherlock BBC show, she's a villain. And she's always portrayed as a villain in popular culture, even though in the story that she premiered in, A Scandal in Bohemia, she both premiered and died in, she was actually a victim of crime. Like, Sherlock was supposed to investigate her, but actually the guy that was hiring him to investigate her was trying to steal from her. And, like, he had a legit reason, quote-unquote, but not really. And, so I really like that instead of her being a villain, and instead of her being an antagonist, the Irene Adler character, her name is Lena, in this book is actually, Charlotte's best friend and her roommate. And you can tell, it's like little things, because, like, Holmeses are so hard to read. But there's this moment when Jamie is in Charlotte's dorm, because they're in high school. He's in her dorm room, and he sees this note on an otherwise uncluttered desk, and it's from Lena, and it says, "Love you, girly, XOXO." And it's old, like, it's been there forever, so it's obvious Charlotte kept it there on purpose, and it means a lot to her, and I love that. And Charlotte gets Lena to help her with their, you know, crime-solving shenanigans, which I think is great. Question number 16, Hyrule Warriors, most anticipated upcoming release. There were a lot of books on this list, but the one I wanted to say the most is Beasts Made of Night by Tochi Onyebuchi, which comes out October 31st, 2017. So I'm really excited for this, because it's a fantasy novel inspired by Nigerian mythology. Now, I am half black, mostly. I mean, I'm like 48%, I'm like 45% black, and like 40% white, and then the other 15% is Native American. So there isn't a lot of black cultural inspired fantasy out there for teens, and I really am looking forward to this book because I want to see what it does. And then question number 17, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D. Oh my gosh, my husband plays those games, and it's so hard to look at them. A book that got an awesome cover change. This was also added by JacquieVlogsHere. I gotta say, the Black Jewels trilogy, the original trilogy, Daughter of the Blood, Heir to the Shadows, and Queen of the Darkness. And this was also Lorien's answer, because originally the copies of the books that I got when I was like 10 had painted covers, and they didn't look that great. The first one was okay, but the second and third one weren't that great. But the photographic covers are gorgeous. Like, seriously, Google it. They're so pretty and so magical looking. And then I added some questions. Question number 18. Triforce Heroes, a book featuring characters who must work together. I have a lot of books like that, but my favorite is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I've never read a heist novel before because I don't really like heist novels. I'm not really into people who steal shit. But this was really good, and I really fell in love with the characters. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised, because I read Shadow and Bone, also by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book set in this universe, and while it was okay, I wasn't that impressed. So I was very impressed by Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Impressed enough that I went and got both of my books signed by Leigh Bardugo when she came to a city near my town. And then question number 19, also added by me. Breath of the Wild, a book with a world you would love to spend more time in. And I said, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own, Making by Catherine M. Valenti. And I realized that is a very long title. All the books in that series have very long titles except book 4. Because the Fairyland in that book is really interesting, and the series is myth punk, where they basically take like folklore and mythology and sort of adapt it like almost into a science, and it's really interesting. They talk about like archetypes and common folkloric tropes and storylines, and how like you can find yourself in these stories, and if you like know what you're navigating, then you know how the story's gonna go, and you know what you need to do. And it talks about like the repercussions of living in these stories, but it's also for middle grade, and the word choice is beautiful. And Catherine M. Valenti is a goddess, and I'm in love with her. So that, and also there was a tag question, but I'm not tagging anybody because I don't tag people other than, anyone who wants to do this tag can totally do this tag, but I don't tag people because I don't like putting people on the spot, because when people put me on the spot, except Lorien, I get really freaked out. So that was my Legend of Zelda tag. Thank you, Lorien, for being so patient with me and not stabbing me in the face for not doing this sooner. I'm really, really sorry. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you guys did the tag. Let me know what your answers were. And I will see you guys in the next podcast. I was almost gonna say next video, but this is not a video. It's a podcast. Bye, everybody!